Our first guest is Dan Gluck, a managing partner at growth equity fund Powerplant Ventures. Dan, thank you for joining us here.
Thank you. It's great to be here and be the first interviewee.
Yeah, the guinea pig, but I guess plant-based guinea pig is what we would go for if we were going to go that route. So let's dive right in. You work with Beyond Meat, plant-based mayo and egg company Just, and other plant-forward brands. Obviously, one of the biggest, if not the biggest trend that we talk about in this industry. Are you surprised by just how much plant-based has taken off?
I'm going to have to say no. When we formed Powerplant Ventures, the thesis was investing in emerging consumer food, beverage, food service, and food tech companies, predominantly plant-based. We think there's a huge need for it for many reasons. The current food system, it's really unsustainable, it's unhealthy, it's inefficient, and it's change is needed, and we think a plant-based diet is one of the best ways to combat that. And so this is really beginning to validate our investment thesis. So it's nice to see things playing out.
That's really great. And when you're looking at these brands, what are you looking for in terms of ingredient lists and uniqueness, and what do you think makes a brand stand out at this point?
Well, there's so many factors, but for us, it first really starts with team and their mission. And we need to ensure that the founders really understand where their business is going. Are they capable founders? Are they aligned with our mission as investors? And then from there, it moves on to the product and the brand and the operational foundation of the business. And so there's a lot of factors that go into our investment diligence process. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to execution, 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 and that starts with just working with brilliant entrepreneurs and founders.
Mm-hmm. And has your mission evolved at all?
Interestingly enough, no, which we're very happy about. When we started our fund in 2015, we wrote our own internal manifesto, and we just had a team offsite for the last 2.5 days in Malibu about 2 weeks ago before the holidays. And we revisited our manifesto, our mission, and our values and goals, and none of them have changed. So I think that's really helps to sort of validate what we're doing and shows that when we started with a really solid foundation.
Mm-hmm. So we just heard Mondelez speak, which I think you caught the end of, talking about investing in better for you ideas and bringing in food waste initiatives and things like that into the brand stories. Is that something that you seek in the brands that you work with? Are you seeking sort of this larger mission?
Yeah, we are. And I think, frankly, it was really built into our DNA as founders of companies. I was the founder of a company called Health Warrior. Mm-hmm. My partner, Mark Rampola, is the founder of Zico Coconut Water, and my partners, TK Pillen and Kevin Boylan, are the founders of Veggie Grill, which is the largest plant-based fast casual restaurant chain in the country right now with nearly 40 locations. All of our businesses had impact written into their business models. It's not just about the plant-based forward movement, but it's also about how we're treating employees and thinking about other environmental impacts from packaging to our supply chain. And so I think today it's table stakes for any investor. It's really what we started with, but if you look at all investors across the spectrum, whether they're strategics, whether they're other major private equity firms, middle market firms, venture firms, I think this is something that everyone has to underwrite into their analysis. And frankly, it's great, and it's something we're spending a lot of time on internally, working actually with an outside consulting firm, how to look at impact across the entire spectrum of an investment from diligence to exit. And it's something that we're going to actually share with the investment community and the entire food community when we're done with it. And we really want it to be something that's an open source project to help try to set a new standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was an interesting report last month from the Hartman Group about sustainability and about what consumers are looking for. And one of the things they found, of course, is that price has an impact on whether a consumer always chooses a sustainable option or not. But when you're talking with brands and thinking about all of that, how can they make sure that they're really doing something that qualifies as a sustainable practice?
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest challenges and what we're working on right now, internally as well as with this consultancy, is really making sure that they're addressing all of these issues, and it's not just sort of greenwashing, so to speak. And so that's something that we're going to try to help set these standards and really keep companies accountable to it. So I think that's really important. I think that's the next stage of development that we're going to have to see in the investing world as it relates to writing in sustainability into our investors' theses.
That's great. Yeah, and as plant-based becomes more mainstream, is it harder, do you think, for brands like Beyond Meat to sort of keep telling the story they started with? What are some challenges there?
I actually think it's just getting started. I think we're in the early innings, and I think while here in the food community, we're all well aware of Beyond Meat, and certainly it going public has brought a lot of attention to the movement, but I think we're just in the early innings. When you think about the sales of Beyond Meat, it's still less than 1% of overall, total meat sales. And so I think it's the tip of the iceberg, and I think something that we continue from an investor's lens. We think that there's just a lot of other segments in the alternatives that we're focused on that haven't even been really touched upon. Obviously, we see alternatives in dairy with milk, and meat has made a big movement, but we think that seafood is another area that's going to be addressed, and there's some really interesting companies and entrepreneurs working on solutions there. Cheese, pet food, the list just goes on. Yogurts, and so we're excited to continue to see all the development there. I would say the biggest challenge is valuations from an investor's lens. Because of the excitement of Beyond Meat, I think there's a lot of other investors who are getting caught up in the euphoria, founders who have certain expectations, and frankly, not every company is going to be a Beyond Meat. Very few will be. And so I think as long as everyone is rational and sets realistic assumptions of growth rates and exit multiples, then I think that the outcome will be phenomenal. But the last thing we want to see is overinflated valuations that end up, just sometimes it could ruin companies because you get very lofty valuations, and then it ends up diluting founders. There's down rounds, and it gets ugly. And I don't think anyone wants to see that. Mm-hmm.
Now, on the investment side, how do you make sure that your relationships with these brands don't change too much as they get bigger?
Look, we, depending on the company, we have different relationships, but by and large, we like to take board seats. We're minority investors. Typically we own somewhere between 10 and 30% of a company. So we're not looking to control these companies, but, we do bring some tools and experience from the companies we founded, as well as the 20 portfolio companies that we've had through Powerplant Ventures. And so, we work closely with these founders and always just want to make sure that we're aligned with their goals. One of our recent portfolio companies, we've been investors with them for a year, and we just had a sit down, not a formal board meeting, it was just a strategic sit down of sitting with the founders of saying, what are your goals? What do you want? Your business is growing phenomenally fast. Are you thinking, you need to slow down and you want to exit? Do you want to grow this into $1 billion business? What do you need as founders, and how can we help? So transparency and communication, like in any relationship, is paramount. And so we try to be as open and transparent with our founders as we can, and just make sure that we're all communicating and we're on the same page.
And what were... Oh.
I was just going to say, usually it's when things go bad, when communication breaks down. When things are going well, it's all pretty easy. But we try to get ahead of it. If something, a company hits a lull, a founder's going through a tough time personally, we try to get ahead of all of that so we just really can understand, what drives each other and what motivates and how we can hold each other accountable and bring out the best in each other.
What did you learn from your time at Health Warrior, maybe a major takeaway that you then can apply to some of these newer brands?
Oh, there's a lot of lessons. We could spend the next day talking about it. But I would say just surrounding yourself with people you enjoy working with, for me, was one of the biggest takeaways. I was very fortunate to have partners who I trusted and I respected, and our relationship only further developed over time, despite when we hit tough times, because it's not always smooth sailing, despite what you see. And we exited to Pepsi and had a nice outcome, but it's not always smooth as it looks from the outside. But any challenging time we went through, we actually came closer together. And so it's something for me, and I think a lesson for all founders, is just make sure you surround yourself with good people, whether that's teammates, whether that's investors, whether that's operating partners, suppliers, manufacturers, people you trust and people you enjoy working with. It sounds trite, but it really is just so important.
Mm-hmm. What are you looking forward to here at the show? I know we're still in early moments
Yeah,
here, but
it's early, but I love the shows. I love the intimacy of the events, and so I'm going to spend a bunch of time in listening to some of the panels, and work the floor a little bit, see a lot of old faces, new faces, and we'll see where it takes me.
sounds good. Yeah, lots of cool brands here this weekend. A nice amount of time to chat with them, I think, too, in between sessions. Do you have any particular brands in mind that you know are here that you're looking forward to chatting with, or?
Yes, there's a few companies that we'll be meeting with, but I also sometimes come to these events without trying to schedule too much, and just be surprised and delighted by entrepreneurs and meeting new people. So I try not to cram my schedule with too many meetings, and like to host meetings typically outside of the conference. But there's not one specific company or target that necessarily that we have.
Mm. I guess, too, just with plant-based in general, we hear so much about plant-based meat, obviously, but is there any other particular area of plant-based that you're just interested in?
Yeah, I think, touched upon a little earlier, but I think seafood is a very, very interesting category. We've looked at several companies, and I think there are some great entrepreneurs, great founders out there. As I said, I still think we're so early in the movement. Powerplant typically likes to invest a little later stage than traditional venture. So we're typically investing when there's some real proof of concept, $5 to $25 million of revenues, and very few of the seafood companies are there yet. And so we're just getting to know all the teams and products and understanding the marketplace before we make any moves there. But that's a category we're interested in. Cheese is another interesting category for us. We have an interesting lens into the plant-based cheese world from Veggie Grill. Given that they're working with tons of cheeses, particularly meltable cheese is a category that no one has really cracked yet, but we find that to be a very interesting category. And I think one of the sleeper categories that it's still very nascent in few players, but it'll be interesting to see how the pet food moves in terms of more sustainable pet foods. And so we've been spending some time getting to understand the pet food industry as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that move where pets become as important as humans to a lot of people.
Exactly. And then we recently just closed on 2 new investments as well. One of them is in a company called Flying Embers. Fermented Sciences is actually the formal legal name, but it was founded by entrepreneur Bill Moses, who is the founder of Kavita, which sold to Pepsi 2 years ago. And he started a company that's really going to be a platform for healthier alcohols. So his first product to market was a hard kombucha, which has 4.5% alcohol content, 85 calories, no sugars, phenomenal tasting, and has a really, really exciting innovation platform and some new products that we'll be rolling out after the hard kombucha. And so we're really excited about that. We just co-led their a $15 million round, and we'll be sitting on the board of that company as well. And then we also just invested in another startup that's in stealth mode right now by a founder that everyone at this conference would know, but it's still in stealth mode. It's a direct-to-consumer coffee concept with some real interesting IP around it, and that will be launching early in 2020. So we're excited to announce that in due time.
Oh, awesome. I look forward to hearing more about that. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dan. It's been great having you here.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Beth.
Thanks so much for watching NOSH. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ding that bell.